Hello and welcome back. In this video I'm going to cover section 6.8, the basics of loans from Contemporary Mathematics by OpenStax. So again, during this section, as I have done in the previous sections for this compound interest type of information, I will be going over the equations, but I'm really going to focus on the use of the TVM, the time value of money calculator. And again, the one I really like to use is jufinance.com/TVM. So let's head on over to the textbook and look at the learning objectives. So we first want to describe various reasons for loans, be able to describe the terminology associated with loans, understand how credit scores work, and start looking at the kind of elementary/rudimentary underpinnings of what does it mean to have a credit score, calculate the payments necessary to pay off a loan, how to read an amortization schedule, and then determine the cost to finance for a loan. So new car envy is something that exists. People often feel the need or the want to have a new car. And when they get that feeling, that is when the search for a car begins. In today's kind of society where we are, have a lot of credit, so to speak, at our disposal, like credit cards, kind of those pay-as-you-go type deals, this kind of stuff is getting more and more kind of popular and out there. So, of course, a car is one of the number one reasons for loans. Overall, typically a person is going to take out a loan is when they want to make a big purchase. So, we're most familiar with loans for big purchases such as cars, homes, and even financing college educations with student loans. All of those types of things come with interest rates, and interest rates come with interest that needs to be paid. So, what we want to look at in this section is how much, if we go in to look at getting a loan, knowing before we go into it kind of what financial impact that's going to have on us. So let's look at some basic terminology of a loan. So the number one thing is the principal. The principal is the amount of the loan. That's how much you borrow or you take out. We call that financed. So if we say, we financed the car for $35,000, that means you've borrowed $35,000 from a financial institution. That could be the dealership specifically. That could be a bank. It could be a credit union. But that's the principal of the loan. So loans can have fixed rate interests. That's, I would say, a high percentage of your loans are going to have fixed rate, which means that interest rate is the same throughout the term of the loan. You also have variable rate interest loans, which means that during the loan term, the interest rate can change. So mortgages, if you have a 30-year or a 15-year fixed rate loan, then that means over the 30 or the 15 years, the interest rate is going to stay the same. But if you have an adjustable rate mortgage, shortened to ARM, A-R-M, then those interest rates can change for however long the adjustable rate is. So, for example, you can see things like a 5-year ARM. That means that every 5 years, the interest rate on that loan can change. And that can make a big difference. Typically, it goes up. So you have to be careful with that, especially, this video is being recorded in 2013. There is some turbulence with interest rates going up. And so that is something you have to consider. The fourth term here is the term of the loan. And that's how long you're going to borrow and you will be expected to pay back the loan. Mortgages are usually longer term loans, 30 years, 15 years. Car loans typically start at 5 years, but can go up as much as 10 years. And so that's a term. So an amortization is the process used to calculate how much payment will be applied to principal on the interest. Amortization is really just a fancy word in the finance business for a payment plan. And when you let me highlight that. So when we're talking about an amortization schedule, what that means is, like, for example, if you go buy a home, they're going to give you the amortization schedule, which says from the first payment to the last payment, this is how much each payment's going to be. This is how much is going to go to the principal amount. This is how much is going to go to interest. Now, there are some things that could change the amortization schedule. For example, if you have an adjustable rate mortgage, or if you kind of fold in your property taxes or your home insurance into the principal or the loan amount, then of course insurance can go up, which would change the cost of the house, or sorry, the mortgage payment. And so you can have things change, but in a fixed rate, perfect world, an amortization schedule would be what you pay from the first payment to the last payment. So 360 months later on a 30-year loan, you're going to be paying the same thing, and it details it out for you. Another type of loan is called a revolving credit or open-ended credit. This is kind of like a credit card. Credit cards are revolving credit or open-ended. That doesn't mean they have they're unlimited. Credit cards do have limits, but they just don't hand you $5,000 that you would charge amount to it, and then you would pay it back or pay it off, and that's kind of how credit cards work. You can also have revolving credit lines with traditional credit accounts or loans. So it's not a credit card. Businesses can have these types of revolving credit accounts if they need to borrow money in order to purchase supplies or things like that. So it's a line of credit with a bank. It's a loan, but you say you have a $20,000 revolving credit line. You could take out $10,000 this month or $2,000 next month, as long as you're paying on whatever it is. The credit card math is a little different, and there's a whole section in this textbook about credit cards later on. So when it comes to credit scores, not everyone pays the same amount of interest on a loan. Two people can go into a bank, they can apply for the exact same loan. One person has a lower interest rate than the other person, and the reason is the lower interest rate person probably has a higher credit score. And so let's talk about credit scores. So credit score, there's 3 credit bureaus: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. I'll highlight those here on the page. This is where you can get your credit score from. It is a federal law now that you are guaranteed 1 free credit score a year. There are other services out there that allow you to get your credit score throughout the year. Now, you have to be careful when people run your credit score. There are 2 types of credit runs. There's a soft credit and a hard credit score. So if you go apply for a loan, you go to try to buy a house or get a credit card, that's a hard credit run, and that can negatively impact your credit score. But requesting your credit from, if you as the person with the credit score, request it from one of the 3 bureaus, that's not going to negatively affect your credit. It's when a finance agency such as a bank or a car dealership runs your credit, that can actually negatively impact your credit score. Now, what other factors can impact your credit score? Well, the number one factor that positively and negatively impacts your credit score is your payment history. All right. So making on-time payments, and the full on-time payment is the number one contributor to a high credit score. So paying stuff on time, not even paying it off, just paying it on time is the number one impactor of your credit score. The second most, I think these are actually in order based on what I know, is something called credit utilization. And so this is, credit utilization is kind of interesting. So it's how much you owe on your total loan accounts. So for example, if you added up everything that you owe, how much do you owe in student loans, how much is on your mortgage, how much is on your credit cards, you added all those up, that is your credit utilization. Now, a better example of that, and I'm going to get a pen here, is to think of it as a percentage. So, say for example, you've got a credit card with a $10,000 limit. So we've got $10,000 here, and let's say that you are you have $2,000 on the credit card, which means you spent $2,000. Then what that equates to is what we call a 20% credit utilization. So if you've got a $10,000 line of credit, which is a better way to really say it, and you've used $2,000 on it, then you are using 20% of that credit. Now, why did I pick 20%? That's kind of the magic number in the finance business. If you have more than 20% credit utilization, that can negatively impact your credit score. If you have less than 20%, let's say you have a $10,000 credit card or a credit card that has a $10,000 limit and you never use it, that can also negatively impact your score, because that means that you're not kind of using the available credit that you have. And if you go to get a loan, they'll be like, well, you have $10,000, why are you not utilizing it? So it's kind of this fine balance between how much do you keep as far as open lines of credit. Now, what's really both a positive and a negative about credit cards is you can have a $10,000 limit, you can have $2,000 on it, but that doesn't mean that you have to keep $2,000 on it and be charged the interest. It just means that at the end of the month, before you pay off your bill, that they're looking for about 20% of all of your credit was utilized. So it's actually a very difficult balancing act that, once you get the hang of it, it's possible, but they're looking for this 20% kind of magic number with this idea of credit utilization. And so if you max out your credit cards and you have all these student loans and you have a mortgage payment and you have 3 cars and you've got basically 100% credit utilization, and then you go to open another credit card, or maybe you're going to try and buy another car, you might get denied because you've got 100% credit utilization. That means that you need to pay off some debt before you can get some more credit. So that's the second most impactful element of a credit score, is credit utilization. The second's the length of credit history. This is really most powerful for people who are just starting out. It took 5 or 6 years of me having credit for it to finally, be a positive impactor for the length of time. And so, it takes a while. It's just not, you can't have an account for 5 months and think that, you're going to increase your credit score in 5 months. It's a long haul, multi-year build when it comes to the length of credit history. So that one's not something that you can quickly fix, because time, kind of goes on as it is. But payment history, making on-time payments, and keeping that credit utilization in check is very important. Another thing that helps impact your credit is the book calls it credit mix, but it's really a diversity in the type of credits that you have. So, for example, here I'll highlight some that's on the screen. Of course, you've got your big ones. You've got credit cards, car loans, mortgages. Of course, student loans. Those are a type of credit which would add a different diversity to your credit mix. And not only having diverse ones, but it's very important that it even says successfully managing both revolving and installment accounts. So revolving, again, is like your credit cards, and then installment accounts is, for example, a car payment. So having a mix of those. And then the last impactor is new credit. So if you open a bunch of credit at the same time, again, that can negatively impact your account, your credit score, for a multitude of reasons. One, when you're going to apply for those loans, you are having your credit run in the not soft credit runs, but hard credit runs. That's negatively impacting. But also that starts to mess with your credit utilization, and it just looks like you're going on a lending spree. So you have to be careful with taking out too many with that new credit there. And so if if you just bought a car and a house and all this, and you got these credit cards, then lenders start to look at that as kind of a high risk, like you may be taking on too much at one time. So if you think of those 5 things as major impactors of your credit, and you kind of balance them, think of them as a balancing act, with your payment history being the largest, credit utilization being the next largest, so forth and so on, then that's how you can increase your credit score over time. So again, there's some nice articles out there. This is one from NerdWallet. I've used NerdWallet in the past and like to read their articles. And then, of course, this video in the textbook about credit scores does a really good job of going more in detail than I'm going to do here, so I advise you head on over and watch that video. So, just real fast, I'm not going to go through all this, but where do interest rates come from? Like, when somebody tells you you've got a 10.99% interest rate, like, did they just make that number up? And the answer is no. It really starts at the very top at the federal government level. All of the money in the United States is controlled by the Fed. And so we can't, all the money that we have in the United States is quote unquote printed and backed by the federal government. And so the Fed, or the Federal Reserve, the federal bank, also sets the interest rates. And so the best rate that anyone can ever have is the rate that they would get directly from the federal government, and that is called the prime rate. And there are some institutions, financial institutions, that will give people, borrowers, the prime rate if they have a good credit score that's high enough to receive the prime rate. Usually you have to have perfect credit, an 850. So you can get the prime rate. So, and that's here was what I'm gonna highlight here that it's talking about. And so a bank's prime rate is the interest rate that it will give to its best customers, because that's basically what it's getting from the federal government. And so they're going to add a little bit to it because that's how they make money. Interest is basically a fee that you pay. And so that is what so that's like the bottom line is the prime rate. And then it can go up from there. Some of the highest interest rates that I have seen reported are on credit cards, and those were over 30%, 32.99%. If you're, an Amazon shopper, or somebody who likes to shop at Amazon, Amazon has a credit card, and their interest rates start at 29% and can go up from there. Your lowest your lowest interest rates are going to come from your credit unions. They tend to be kind of not for profit, or if they are for profit, they are shareholder funded, which means that you, as the person with the account at the credit union, would be a shareholder, and it's reinvested back to you as one of the shareholders. So they can make a profit, but typically those profits are redistributed, or interest rates are lowered for credit unions. As where your big banks, such as Bank of America, Wells Fargo, their rates, again, they borrow money directly from the federal government. Then they charge a little bit more interest, or a lot more interest, to make money off you. Another example is car loans. Car loans have interest rates upwards of, I think it's about 5% right now for car loans. Is kind of the average. There, of course, is much better. If you're in North Carolina, State Employees Credit Union typically has car loans for about 5%, anywhere from 5 to 6%. But your big banks, again, like Wells Fargo or Bank of America, you're going to be looking at 20%-ish. So, how do we calculate loan payments? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it. Loan payments are paid basically simple interest monthly, and almost always monthly, unless the terms say otherwise. So let's look at this example. First, here's the formula. Interest paid is the principal times the rate divided by N, which N is the number of payments in a year. Again, like I said, it's most often 12, unless the terms say otherwise. So let's look at this. We're not going to use the TVM calculator just yet. I just want to show you that if you've got a remaining balance of $13,450 and your interest rate is 6.75%, then here's kind of what you should expect to pay. So you start with the $13,450. All right. So you start with that, and you're going to multiply it by 0.0675. That is our interest rate converted to a decimal divided by 12. And so this is how much interest we would be charged. So let me go grab my calculator. All right. So unfortunately, I cannot have those drawings up at the same time as my calculator. But we're going to do 1345 times 0.0675 divided by 12. And that's $75.66. All right. So you're looking at interest of $75.67 for that month. So, and then for the next month, we'll just do it right here on the same page. $8,460 times 0.0599 divided by 12. Then that loan we would have an interest payment of $42.23. So if we look here, you can see there's that $75.66 by that calculation, and here it's just $42 and interesting. Oh, sorry, I mistyped here. So let's go up here, and I added $10. So that knocks our interest rate down, or our interest payment down, to $42.18. So that's what happens is every month your interest is recalculated based on the number of payments in the year that you're going to make. And that then is added to the principal, and then you subtract any payments. So that's kind of how you find your running balance. So I'd say stop the video and try the Your Turn now, 6.77. And once you've tried it, you can click these links in the textbook and go see if you got the answer right. All right, so continuing right along, one of the most important things you're going to want to calculate when you go get a loan is how much am I going to have to pay a month, right? And again, we have the formula for payments. I'll highlight it here. I'm going to use the TVM calculator, but if your instructor wants you to use the formula, know that this is the formula for finding payments. PMT is the payments. It's going to give you the same answer as the TVM calculator. I just personally like using the TVM calculator better because it's quicker and we get to the answer faster. So let's say that we went and got a car loan for $28,500 at an annual rate of 3.99% for 5 years. All right, so $28,500 annual rate of 3.99 for 5 years. So coming over to the TVM calculator, we'll do $28,500 at an interest rate of 3.99%. Now that's a prime rate. Let me be honest with you. Those are going to be hard to find these days. So you've got period of 5 years. So if you do 5 times 12, that's 60. You're going to be paying for 60 months, and it's going to be monthly. So you're looking at a car payment for $28,000 at 4% interest, basically, for 5 years to be $524.74. So if you're going to budget and you say, okay, well, I want this car. It costs me about $28,500. I can get a rate of 4% from my bank for 5 years. Then you should expect to be paying around $530 a month for your car. Now let's flip that over to a bigger payment, which would be a house. So let's say you're going to buy a house for $136,700. So let me copy that. And the TVM calculator only likes numbers, so we'll delete the comma and the dollar sign. And then 5.75% for 15 years. So if I'm going to delete this. So 15 times 12 is 180, and that's monthly. And so my payment here is going to be $1,135.17. So house payment's going to be more substantial than a car payment, but in some cases you can have a car payment that's as much as a house. So just to go on a little tangent sidebar here, let me show you. I'm going to refresh the TVM to clear it out. So nowadays, new electric vehicles are in the 40,000. So let's say you got $42,000 on an electric vehicle. Let's say you don't get that nice prime rate. Let's say you get about the national average of 10.5%, and you want to borrow it for 5 years. So that's 60 months, and you're going to make monthly payments. That's $902.74. So you're looking at almost, over $900 a month for a $42,000 car with, a 10.5% interest. If you could get something in the 4% range, that's going to knock off a substantial amount, close to, $300. But again, 4% nowadays is pretty hard to find. Even at the state employees, it's over 4% for a new car for 5 years. Another thing a lot of people do to lower car payments is they increase the periods. So if you add another year, 72 months instead of 60, that does, shave off over $100 on the payment, but that means you're going to be paying on it for another year. You can go upwards to a decade, so you can do 120 months. Again, that gets your car payment around $426, but you're paying on that car for a decade. And if you're talking about something like an electric vehicle, technology, batteries, wear and tear, you're not going to get, by the time you pay it off, it's really going to be detrimental. In fact, think about the total payment here. If we bring up the calculator, if we paid on the car $425.23 for 120 payments, then you've paid $51,027.60 for your $42,000 electric vehicle. It's even worse for houses. I mean, you still got a house, which is nice. But let's say you get, again, 4.4%. Most houses, let's say we go with the 15-year loan, and we calculate the payment. Again, that's $1,005 a month times 180. Then that's $181,000. We borrowed $136,000, and we've over the course of 15 years paid $181. So if you subtract the principal from that, what you've basically done is paid $45,000 in interest. What you need to think about that is that was the cost for the bank to lend you the money. So if you divide that by the 180, then basically they were charging you. This is average. This is not the actual math. I'm just trying to make it make sense to you and break it down. But this $45,000 is like a fee over 15 years. So basically, it was on average an extra $250 a month in fees, basically interest, for that loan for you to borrow. So that's a way to kind of think about interest, is that's a fee. So if you go in here and look, you'll see that the $524.75 and the $1,135 from this particular example. So let's do it again just to make sure. Was it 136? Yeah, for 15 years. So yeah, $1,129.36. Oh, we're off a little. What's going on here? 75. So I think I found a typo in the book here. So they went from 136,000. I think it's because they're mixing and matching when they wrote the book here, but you can see that they do 136.7, not just 136. And so I'd put it in the calculator, 136, and get 1129.36, which is what I would have gotten, 1129.36 from the TVM calculator. So there's a typo here. If I would have done what they accidentally did, let's do 136.7 and do payments. And then, yeah, that gets me what they had there. So they have made a minor typo in the book, which, you know, it happens. It's a free textbook. But the correct answer is 1129.36 with what they've written here. So based on those parameters, the 136 with 5.75% for 15 years, we should get $1,129.36. But that is not what they got. So just be careful there. We did find an error in the textbook here. But this one, I think we were spot on with what we had there. So I would say go ahead and pause the video and try these problems. Check your answer in the back with the your turns. But we're going to keep going. Again, the book likes to use Google Sheets. There's nothing wrong with Google Sheets. You can see that you can use a PMT formula in Google Sheets, but the TVM calculator is just as good. So let's keep moving right along. I'm just going to finish up this video with a talk about what's called an amortization schedule or table. So again, this is a detailed list of all the payments that you would have throughout the duration of your loan. So here we've got an example of an amortization schedule for a $5,000 loan at 8% for 5 years. So the monthly payment is $101.38. So just to justify that, make sure that, you know, we're looking at the correct stuff the same, because I trust the TVM calculator with, you know, pretty good. And so we're talking about monthly payments, 5 years. So we're talking about 60 months with payments. So $101.38. So that's spot on. So what this really does is you're paying $101.38, but not all of that's actually going to the principal of the loan, because every month you're being charged interest. In fact, every month you're charged, in this case, the first month, $33.33 of interest. And if you're going to make a $100 payment, of course, what happens is you'd say, okay, well, you've got $5,000 that you've borrowed. You're going to pay $101.38. But that month added $33.33. So let's come over here and look just to see how that works in the calculator. So you had a $5,000 balance. That was just from the initial. And then you're going to subtract 101.38. But then you're going to add back $33.33 of interest. And that's going to be the $4,931.95. Well, then the next month you're going to be charged interest. So that's this number. Well, where did that come from? Well, that's your balance. So that's the $49.31.95 times the interest, which in this case was 8%, so 0.08 divided by 12 because it was a monthly interest. And so you can see that's $32.88. So that's where we get this interest. And so we're going to calculate your next month's balance, because you're paying the same thing every month, is going to be $49.31.95 minus your payment of $138, and then you're going to add on $32.88 of interest. And that's going to bring your current balance to $48.63.45. And then this continues until you've paid off the loan in 60 months. And so you can kind of see, and this really makes it very enlightening, that after 20 months, let's do 10, that's easier math for me. So after 10 months, you've basically paid $1,013.80. And your balance has went from $5,000 to $42,998.73. So even though you've paid over $1,000 on the loan, you've not even knocked $1,000 off the loan. Why is that? This column right here, the interest. Now you can see that as you go along in this amortization schedule, the interest is going down because your balance is going down, and your amount paid to the principal is going up. Well, that's good, but you know, after 27 months, let's go here to 24, because that's 2 years. You've not even knocked the loan down by half. So you have to kind of keep that in mind when you're borrowing money, that interest is a game that plays against you, when you're borrowing money, and it's a game that plays for you when you're saving money. So, and again, this is just how to read an amortization schedule is all I care about for this particular section. But just knowing when you look at the payment, that is calculated from the TVM calculator or the formula based on the terms and all that. But your interest is the percent of the remaining balance. So in this case, borrowed $10,000. Your interest is going to be the $10,000. Again, just to do the calculation real fast, $10,000 times, and this had an interest rate of 4.75%. So 0.0475 divided by 12 because it's monthly. So you had an interest payment of, move it over here. Oh, I forgot a zero. Let me just do it again. 0.0475 divided by 12. So $39.59, and you're only paying $64.62 a month. So you're not making a huge dent in this at all because your interest is so low. In fact, you can see that, our interest started out low and is getting larger. Well, this is total interest paid, rather. I'm sorry. This is a cumulative amount. This is how much total interest you've paid throughout the time, and this is going to just get larger and larger. But you can see that, when you don't pay a whole lot, when you've got your payment pretty low, your principal payment stays pretty low, and your interest doesn't go down fast. Like, you want your interest to go down quicker, and the better way to do that is to pay more on the monthly payment, which is why there's the old adage that if you can pay an extra house payment every year, you can knock, years off your loan. And that's absolutely true. And that's because you're reducing this interest and increasing this principal. In fact, an extra payment is applied directly to the principal, which is what makes it so powerful. So there's a whole video here in the textbook. I'll leave that for you to watch about reading an amortization schedule. I just wanted to kind of run through that real fast. So I want to do one more example, and then I'm going to end this because this is starting to run a little long. So let's talk about the cost of financing a personal loan. In other words, you take out a loan, you've got all these fees and stuff that you've paid. How much does the loan actually cost you at the end of the day, or at the end of, in this case, 5 years? So we've got Arena here signed a loan for $15,000 at 6.33% for 5 years. And she had to pay an origination fee. This is very common for larger loans, especially mortgages having things like origination fees. So over the course of the loan, she paid $2,537.96 in interest. What is her cost to finance the loan? So let's look at it this way. So she took out $15,000. She had to pay $750 in origination fees, and it told us she paid $2,037.96 in total interest. So by the end of the 5 years, she's paid $18,287.96 in total for the fee, or for the loan. Now, it says her cost to finance this loan was $3,287.96. That's kind of true, in that that's above the original $15,000, but in total, Arena would have paid back $18,287.96. So I think this is the way this is worded is a little misleading in what it means. But it's not wrong. It's true that she's paid $3,000 above what she borrowed, but she still had to pay back the $15,000 too. So what it's really just talking about is the origination fee plus the interest would give you, quote unquote, the cost of finance. But that is undermining the true impact of the $18,000 that it really cost for the $15,000 loan. So, all right, that ends it for this section. Now you've watched the video. Hopefully you've taken some handwritten notes or written something down so that you have something to reference later. Now it is your turn. Go back through this section, try those your turn problems. The answers are at the end of the section. And then once you're done with that, head on over to the LMS and work on those online homework problems.